Welcome to the Agility in Real Life podcast, Take 5 in Real Life. Now your hosts, Mike Studeman and Jeff Lee.
Welcome back to the podcast. Big news this week. We now have a name, take5IRL. Mike, why did we choose that name?
Well, it was the top vote getter in our LinkedIn poll. Thanks to those of you that replied to that. And I think it summarizes what we're trying to do here, Jeff. 5 minutes, quick bursts of knowledge based upon real life experience, which is what we're all about.
Perfect. Today's topic is also getting into a real life experience of conflict. Right? All of us have had some conflict at work, and part of our lives is to make that as productive as possible. Mike, what are some of the things that you've seen, what works to help make conflict a positive experience?
Yeah, well, let me begin by saying I'm a little bit conflicted about this topic.
Yeah, there it is.
I had to do it. I'm sorry. I apologize to our viewers and listeners as well.
He's not sorry.
No, I mean, I think conflict, first of all, a lot of times we have in our heads that conflict is bad. Conflict is not bad. There can be productive conflict. And I think you have to be comfortable with conflict in today's workplace generally, but certainly if you're going to be acting as a change agent, such as the Scrum Master is. So that's kind of the first thing. I think the other piece is if it is getting destructive, if it's getting personal, don't be afraid to run away from it. I actually used to have a Charlie Brown cartoon, Jeff, hanging in my home office here, where Linus is talking to Charlie Brown. And as you know, Charlie Brown's a little bit of a high maintenance individual. And he was lamenting some problem that he was having. And Linus, being his personal coach, said, "Remember, Charlie Brown, there's no problem that's so big we can't run away from it." So don't be afraid to call time out when you're in conflict. In fact, I coached a team once. They had a rule in their working together agreement. They had a rule in their working together agreement that said anyone can call timeout at any time, but if you call timeout, you have to get back with the person that you're in conflict with within 24 hours to try to resolve the conflict. And while it wasn't executed a lot, just that 24 hours would give people perspective or time to get perspective on the conflict, which I think is always good. Mm-hmm. What about you? What are some of your favorite techniques to diffuse conflict?
Yeah, before I go there, I just want to note that, this has been a number of episodes where we reference team working agreements, right? Which you don't need to be an agile team to have a working agreement.
Completely agree.
Yeah, very, very important. For me, and little personal note, I am conflict avoidant as a personality, right? I'm not one who runs to conflict. I'm traditionally been one who ran away from it. So it's been really helpful for me to have some tools, some go-to kinds of things that I can use in the moment. And I'm going to show you a guide. It's, one good tool here is Sam Kainer and Facilitator's Guide to Participatory Decision-Making.
Love it.
Talk about some, the conflict strategies in there. A couple of techniques as a facilitator to mirror what someone's saying or paraphrase what they're saying. These are two different techniques, and mirroring is actually saying exactly what they just said, saying it back to them. It tells someone that they've been heard. Same thing with paraphrasing. It's putting it in different words. If they went on for 3 or 4 paragraphs and you put that into a couple of sentences and ask, is that what you're saying? Did I capture that right? Shows someone that they've been heard and helps to diffuse the situation a little bit. A couple other things is to validate and empathize with people who are talking. So again, validating is saying, I can see how you feel that way, right? It makes sense given your experience that you would feel this way. Empathizing is taking that the next step, saying, I would feel that way too. And so you're really building that bridge of someone who's, whatever they're feeling, now they're in a safe space and you can deal with that conflict in a productive manner.
Yeah, I like both of those. Just to build on that, empathizing, as I struggle over that word, technique. One technique that I've used when I've been facilitating conflict that I picked up being the father of 3, much like you, Jeff, is we as parents sometimes hear our own words coming back at us. And when we do that, I oftentimes find myself saying, that's what you heard, but that's not what I intended. I think in conflict, sometimes having the two parties argue each other's position can be very insightful, because you immediately hear what the person has internalized, and oftentimes it's not what you were intending. So that I think. Oh, what was that?
Your kids must love that.
Well, that's why we're not going to have them on the podcast. But it does work in a Scrum situation. But I think it builds on Kainer's technique of both validating and empathizing, if I can say that. The other one, as I imagine are nearing the end of our time box here, is going back to working together agreements. Agree on what a good conflict looks like in your team before you're in the heat of the moment. Lay out how you think a good conflict should be structured. How are people behaving? Is it face to face? Are they reacting to the idea, not the person? Are we talking about the present status, not fighting battles from wars that were fought many, many years ago? Right. So those are a couple of other things that I always like to throw in there.
All right. Fantastic. Well, hopefully this conflict podcast, not a lot of conflict between Mike and I in this one. Sorry if you were hoping for that. But hopefully it gave you some things to work with and some references. The Sam Kainer and the Guide to Participatory Decision Making, valuable in many contexts, not just for conflict. So I definitely recommend picking that up if you're not familiar.
Completely agree. Thanks, everyone.
The product vision for Take5 in Real Life is to provide members of the Agile community with an idea that they can incorporate into their daily lives to make them more effective. We thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.